The starting lineup has been the essential argument of the Orlando Magic's offseason. So what works and what will be the key to making this team work today on Locked On Magic?
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is August 27th, 2026. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to talk lineups and rotations. What worked for the Orlando Magic last year, because there's so much that's the same, and why two players are the absolute key to this team finding success next season. And the bigger question, where does Nikola Vucevic fit into all of this? We'll get to that coming up here. We'll get to all that today on Locked On Magic, because really since the day after the season ended, Jeff Weltman, the Magic's president of basketball operations, made his key argument, made his big argument, saying, when we were healthy, we were pretty good, guys. Like, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not going to give up on this project, because when things worked, they worked, and they worked really well. Jeff Weltman, maybe that was spin. The data suggests that, yeah, things did work better than the Magic's record would suggest. In fact, like I said this early in the week, thanks for everyone who's been following on social media and liking that. That's bringing in all the human monies. Things could not have gone much worse last year, and they still won 45 games. They were still like in the hunt for so many of their key goals. And so it is fair to say, if this team were healthy, the Magic would have been really solid. There's plenty of other like lineup evidence for this too, and plenty of other things that the Magic did well that should translate. And because this roster is virtually the same, and again, maybe some different context, there's a new coach. So there's a new coach. There'll probably be some new rotations as well. We'll see what carries over. You can't count on everything carrying over, but there's at least some evidence that says, yeah, better health luck. Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero on the floor for 70 plus games. Desmond Bane on the floor for 70 plus games. Jalen Suggs for 65 plus games. Whatever the number is, the Magic could be a whole lot better and be closer to what everyone thought they could be. The kind of animating and stat that has been at the forefront that I have pushed and I have said, of all the lineups that played at least 150 minutes last year, the Orlando Magic starting lineup was the 9th best lineup in the league. That starting lineup, third most used lineup for the Orlando Magic last year, had a plus 11.6 net rating in 182 minutes. It dropped by about a point and a half, too, in the 5 games or the however many games Franz Wagner played in April. They were not as dominant in April. In the playoffs, that lineup had a plus 14.7 net rating in 61 minutes. Of every lineup that played at least 50 minutes, that lineup was the best non-San Antonio Spurs lineup in the entire playoffs. Again, matchup dependent. The Pistons are a weird team, but the Pistons starting lineup was also one of the best lineups. The Pistons starting lineup was actually, I believe, had a better net rating in the regular season than the Magic. They were underwater through game 4. Through game 4, I think they were like a -2 points per 100 possessions. And the Magic starting lineup, obviously, winning their minutes. It is sort of fair to say that if Franz Wagner does not get hurt, the Orlando Magic win that series. It is probably fair to say if Franz Wagner does not get hurt, the Magic are at least a 5 seed. Now, I'll present some skepticism that they would have gotten to 4. They were a game and a half out of 4th in early March, so maybe they would have, but it stands to reason Franz Wagner cost the Magic certainly 3 games in the playoffs And certainly one or two games. Now, the Magic still should have won one of those games to advance to the playoffs. The Magic still should have won enough games to be the 5 seed as it was. Those criticisms are fair. I don't think this lineup data should be a cop-out. I don't think it should be an excuse not to address issues. I do think the Magic, have probably made a mistake standing as pat as they did and not understanding that there are real issues with this team. But the logic's there. This actually goes beyond that, though. And this was something I looked up as I was looking into lineup data earlier in the day. Articles up on Orlando Magic Daily if you want to listen, if you want to read. There were 16 lineups that played at least 150 minutes last year in the entire NBA that had a net rating of plus 10 points per 100 possessions. The Magic joined the Denver Nuggets and the Detroit Pistons as the only teams with at least two lineups that met that criteria, playing 150 minutes together and a plus 10 net rating. And believe it or not, the Magic starting lineup without Jalen Suggs and without Franz Wagner, rare Jalen Suggs is not in the lineup and isn't supercharged. Anthony Black, Desmond Bane, Tristan Silva, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter had a plus 9.2 net rating. This is all to say the Magic had two really strong lineups last year. Their starting lineup was the best. And so it goes to reason that the Magic have something that they can sprout from. Lineup data can be a little, you look at lineup data and you say over the course of a long stretch of time, but when you actually kind of break down lineup data sometimes, it really doesn't feel like a ton of minutes. So 182 minutes over 19 games accounts for just 9.6 minutes per game. And obviously your starting lineup's going to play more minutes together, but 9.6 minutes per game. Think about that. That's not even a quarter. So obviously a good starting lineup is not enough. But if you can tweak lineups, if you can still have that strong base to start growing from and sprouting your rotation from, that's the basis, because those 10 minutes or 12 minutes or however long your starting group is on the floor together, those are usually the most consequential minutes in a game. Usually the start of the game, end of the game. And those are usually, they're usually going to play the most minutes of any group on the floor, because some groups will be on the floor for a minute and a half at a time before the next phase of players rolls out. Like a Paolo Banchero plays the first 11 minutes of the first quarter. Franz would usually come out 4 or 5 minutes into the game. Some people would say, why is Franz coming out so early? It's like, that's normal. He plays with the bench group. And again, we don't know how Sean Sweeney's going to map his rotation. So maybe he'll have a different way of doing things. Maybe we'll see more Paolo and Franz together. Maybe we'll see Paolo play with the second unit more and Franz carry the team through the entire first quarter. We'll find out when we get to the regular season, because it won't happen in the preseason. But this is the base from which the Magic can grow. And clearly there are other lineups that work. Of the Magic's top 5 lineups, only one had a negative net rating, and most had a net rating above 5 points per 100 possessions. Now, again, that means you're not winning them all the time, but you're winning them more often than not. If you got a plus 10 net rating, you're winning. You're maybe winning those lineups 4 out of every 5 games, but that's still a significant amount. That means you are racing well past all these teams, and they're just not playing often enough. The Magic's most used lineup last year was Tristan de Silva starting for Franz Wagner. They had a plus 10.8 net rating in 259 minutes, a 116.1 offensive rating and a 105.2 defensive rating. It would make sense that a straight swap, backup small forward in for the starting small forward, is the way to go. Is the way to kind of begin building a lineup. And, Anthony Black coming in for Jalen Suggs, or Anthony Black playing, coming in for Desmond Bane, playing alongside Jalen Suggs. That lineup actually did really, really well too. The Anthony Black, Desmond Bane, Tristan, Silva, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter lineup, again, plus 9.2. The lineup that did not do well, the most used bad lineup, is actually Anthony Black stepping in for Jalen Suggs at a minus 4.7 net rating in 115 minutes. It's about finding the right combinations. And again, because it's virtually the same team as last year, we have some clues about what works. And I think the Magic would be smart to use it. The problem last year was twofold. One, there were so many injuries that the Magic's depth really did get stretched. And two, it was that key bench players and lineups that worked in the regular season absolutely did not in the playoffs. The question of consistency is going to be next. And that starts with two key bench players that we need to talk about more specifically. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by friends over at Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location, like pronouncing words correctly. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In fact, in the minute that I'll be talking to you today, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. It's the offseason. You're always trying to find the right combination, whether it's adding a new player, whether it's adding the right leader, whether it's figuring out the best way to optimize your lineup, to optimize your team. That's what the offseason is for. It's for kind of thinking about these big questions. But when you're in the workplace, you don't have an offseason. You need the right people now. So having someone that you know can fill that role and fill that job is vital. Spend less time searching for that person and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. You need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Like I mentioned, I wrote a big article on Orlando Magic Daily. It's up as I'm recording this, so it's my little cheat sheet when I'm talking about it on the show here. I spent my day Wednesday really looking through lineup data and asking myself, like, what do the Magic's most used and most successful lineups say about the way that this team needs to work? Or like, what can it tell us about what needs to happen? And all the most used lineups are some variation of the Magic starting lineup. Like, that is a real thing. Suggs, Bane, Franz, Paolo, Wendell Carter. Everything else is an offshoot of that. Magic are going to have, again, the Magic should not have any lineups next year that do not include one of Paolo, Franz, or Desmond Bane. Frankly, they probably need at least two of them on the floor at all times. Now, Anthony Black, if you add Jalen Suggs. Now, I think Anthony Black and the potential that he can match what he did last season, alleviates some of that pressure. So you have a scoring outlet in him. I honestly think, and I want to talk more about what Nikola Vucevic might bring to the table and a little bit later on, but like Nikola Vucevic is someone that you can run some offense through. And that's something I've been calling for. Is they just need more guys who you could give the ball to and they know what to do and they know how to score. Nikola Vucevic can absolutely be that guy. And so there are more weapons and a little bit more flexibility in building your rotation and building your lineups. But last year, every piece of success started with that core group, that core starting lineup group. And again, like your starting lineup is going to be the lineup that plays the most over the course of a game. So naturally, like I think these top five lineups are all former starting lineups, or all lineups that the Magic had to turn to. But I also wanted to take a look to some extent at okay, how can we tweak this? What does this look like if we change it a little bit? If we play Jamal Cain instead of Tristan da Silva, that starting lineup, that first lineup, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Tristan da Silva, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter, plus 10.8 net rating. Take Jamal Cain and put him in the lineup for Tristan da Silva. It was only 15 minutes, but a plus 5.2 net rating. That's promising. In the playoffs, it's a plus 7.8 net rating in 37 minutes. That most used starting lineup with Tristan da Silva in for Franz Wagner played only 11 minutes in the playoffs, a minus 16 net rating, including 84 offensive rating. That, to me, spells one of the bigger issues the Magic had. I have been very critical of Tristan da Silva. And look, it's kind of smaller potatoes. It's, small potato stuff, as Yelena would say. But it's actually kind of big. Look, Tristan da Silva was a rookie. We expected him to come in, make a more immediate impact. He had his moments. He kind of goes up and down, but he improved as a three-point shooter last year at 37%. I'm going to watch Germany play on Thursday and report back to you on Orlando Magic Daily at least about how Tristan da Silva looks heading into these World Cup qualifiers. And, again, he's kind of playing the same role. They're not putting him on the ball a ton. I think he's creating a little bit more, but Tristan da Silva, to me, how he plays, is it going to swing the entire season? If Paolo and Franz are healthy, the Magic should be in the hunt for home court advantage. If Tristan da Silva misses time, I'm very comfortable with Jamal Cain. I think Jamal Cain is a really interesting and valuable player. And I think he is going to make an impact on this team. I am really excited. I'm really excited for Jamal Cain. I think he is a really solid option as a third wing, on the depth chart. He'll play, and he obviously, he helped win game 4. We can say all we want about, they shouldn't have been relying on him as much as they did. To me, the problem with Tristan da Silva is that Jamal Cain outplayed him in the playoffs. Tristan da Silva became virtually unplayable in the playoffs. Or not virtually unplayable, but he just didn't perform. Averaged 9.9 points per game, so clearly very capable. 37.4% three-point shooting on 4.2 three-point attempts. Very solid, one of the better shooters on the team. In the playoffs, all of that disappeared. And look, this was his first real playoff experience. Then he played 5 minutes in the playoffs in 2025 against Celtics. 4.1 points per game. Shot 31.3% from three on 2.3 attempts per game. It's somewhat understandable why the Magic stuck with Jamal Cain. Jamal Cain averaged slightly more points, did not shoot much better, but defensively added something that they didn't quite have. And so I was just kind of pouring through this lineup data and thinking, okay, we have this lineup, we know it works. How can we tweak it a little bit? Would flipping Franz in there be better? More times than not, it would be. Would trying Nikola Vucevic there or Goga Batadze there at center, would that work? And I just kind of came back to this realization. What the Magic's problem was last year is that there were so many injuries that Jamal Mosley was scrambling to just fill his rotation out. And so there were a lot of bad lineups out there. And some of that was, maybe Mosley tried too hard to play 10 guys. Or wasn't willing to give Jet Howard or Jace Richardson some burn, some run, to see if they could fill those minutes. And the stuff that he could trust, for the most part, worked, but it put a lot of pressure on those players and on those lineups to always work. And then when it came to the playoffs, some of the stuff he could trust, he couldn't. And so I think part of the problem in those last 3 games was, A, they couldn't ride Paolo as much as they probably needed to. B, matchups. Playoffs are all about matchups. They were able to move Asar Thompson back onto Desmond Bane or onto whoever they needed to move on to slow down who he was guarding. Because, again, Asar Thompson is one of the best defenders in the league. the Magic lost a huge matchup advantage when Franz Wagner went out. And I do remember thinking to myself after game 5, for the first time in this series, the Magic have a question that I'm not sure how they answer, or they couldn't answer that question adequately in game 5. I thought to that point in the series, the Magic were making the Pistons answer a lot of existential questions about themselves. And game 5 was the first time I exited the game saying the Magic have some things to figure out before game 6. And for half, at least, they figured them out. To me, the Magic's depth was stretched so thin because Franz Wagner was such a keystone player. Like, he makes so many other things about this team click and make sense. And to me, thinking about it now, like, Noah Penda, I'm really excited about Noah Penda. But he was so raw and made so many mistakes. His lineups were bad. They just weren't good. Jonathan Isaac is such a drain on the offense. And his defense just wasn't as impactful as it's been. And so you had a lot of, like, Jamal Mosley trying to throw stuff against the wall and trying to answer an equation that the Magic's roster couldn't balance. It can balance it when it's healthy. And I think that was very evident throughout the course of the season. But there were just players the Magic, Franz Wagner was a player they could not lose. Jalen Suggs is a player they could not afford to lose as currently constructed. Unless a player like Anthony Black steps up. Unless a player like Tristan Silva steps up into a bigger role or takes advantage of that added opportunity. Even it may not be a bigger role, but that's when you have to do your role even better. When other players have to kind of fill in gaps in the roster. I do think Orlando, like Jeff Weltman's thesis for the summer, or hypothesis, I don't know what it is. I do think it's not wrong. Like, if Paolo and Franz both play 75 games, I'm really confident in what this team can do. If they have to miss a month, and I'm talking major injuries, I'm talking like 10, 15 game injuries at a time, like at once. Like, guys miss random games here and there throughout the season. That happens. And one game anybody can win. There's a reason why we play 82 games. We play 82 games because over a larger sample size, there is far less variance. If they have to miss a month, if they have to miss 3 weeks, that's where this team gets stretched thin. That's where they need a guy like Tristan Silva to play so much better. And in the playoffs, they needed someone they could rely on. Because as good as I think Jamal Cain can be, and I think this was a huge, huge season for him, I'm really excited to see what he can do this season with when he gets this opportunity. Because I think he's a very good player. Again, very solid reserve, like end of rotation guy. That's why they need Tristan Silva, though. And especially because he is a shooter or a potential shooter. And the Magic have so little shooting. Games where De Silva makes a ton of shots, games where Suggs makes a ton of his threes, those are the games where this Magic team look unbeatable. And so, kind of quietly, Tristan De Silva is really vital for this season. And it's not that we're expecting him to go off and average 20 points per game or become this superstar player. It's the Magic need him to give the support and create the spacing and become that threat that maybe it doesn't flip you from one tier to the next, but it wins you game 5. It wins you game 6. It wins you that big game in March that wins a tiebreaker for you. if I haven't made this point enough, and I'm way over my time here, but if I haven't made this point enough this offseason, let me make sure I make it now. The margin between where the Magic were last year and where the Magic thought they would be is not very big. It's a bunch of little things. And one of those little things is a guy like Tristan Silva, a guy who can make a lot of different lineups make sense, especially a lot of reserve lineups. When you're weakening your lineup to rest guys and you have only one or two of your starters out there, he's a guy that can make that lineup make sense. And so again, very quietly, because we haven't done a lot of Tristan Silva stuff this summer, how he develops and how he plays, it could help turn this bench from one of the lowest scoring benches in the league to one that impacts and wins games for this team. One that has very workable lineups that mean the Magic can rest their starters just a little bit more, or rest, Paolo just a little bit more, or Franz just a little bit more, as the case may be. Tristan Silva has a big, big role to play, even if the stats will still be pretty meager. One guy who can help turn that bench equation around is Nikola Vucevic. What the lineup data tells us about how Vuce can impact games, we'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. The biggest, obviously the big offseason acquisition was Nikola Vucevic. And I get it, minimum contract. It's just like, if he's your big offseason acquisition, boy, did you have a great summer. Yeah, like I'm not going to dispute that. It's a quiet summer for the Magic. The Magic added a minimum guy. And look, Vuce at the minimum is a bargain. That is a deal that is good for an Orlando team that's cash strapped. He is someone that can still contribute. He's someone that can still put up points and still put numbers on the board. The question is, how do the Magic use Nikola Vucevic? And and this is where impact matters. Now, obviously, his time in Boston was weird, so I want to look specifically at Chicago stats. For the Bulls last year, they were about their average with him on the floor. They're a minus 4.3 net rating with Vucevic on the floor. It's minus 5.3 for the season. In fact, let me cut that to pre-All-Star break. Let me get rid of a lot of the noise from him not being on the team. Before the All-Star break, the Bulls net rating was minus 4.1. With Nikola Vucevic on the floor, it was minus 4.3. So they were a little bit worse with Vucevic on the floor. About the same defensively, 117.6 defensive rating overall, 117.5 117.5 with Vucevic on the floor, so about the same. 113.5 offensive rating overall, 113.2 with Vucevic on the floor. Now, Vucevic was a bit of an odd fit in Chicago. Chicago was trying to pick up the pace. Vucevic was a good soldier. He didn't complain. He did his best. He wasn't built for the kind of offense that Chicago was trying to run. Same thing kind of happened in Boston. He got hurt, injured his shooting hand, so shot didn't go down. Boston essentially didn't run very much post-ups. They kind of just stuck him in the quarter to shoot threes. And that's not really the best way to use Nikola Vucevic. I do think Vuce will put up the counting stats. And the question, we'll put up the counting stats. The question is, can he still make an impact for this Magic team? That is frankly the ultimate question, because every time I looked at some of these lineups, and again, let's figure out, okay, who works with Nikola Vucevic? Can we do a Suggs, Bane, Franz, De Silva, or Isaac, or Penda, Vucevic lineup? Well, a lot of the Magic lineups are okay offensively. They're not world beaters, but all of their best lineups are incredible on defense. And so the question with Nikola Vucevic is in some degree the same question that we all had about Tyus Jones last year. Remember, we've talked Tyus Jones for 3 years. We knew that guy kind of inside down and said, like, well, the Magic should go get him because they just need a point guard. They need a distributor. And they can hide his defense a little bit. And maybe hiding defense at the center position is a little bit easier than hiding defense at the point guard position. But very, very clearly, even Jeff Weltman admitted this after they traded him, the Magic just could not, they could not absorb how rough Tyus Jones' defense was. And nobody knew why. And some of that had to do with the Magic's own defensive regression. But it was a disaster. We're talking about all these lineup stuff, like Tyus Jones lineups were a disaster. Hard to find a signing that just did not work, and one that everyone thought was going to work pretty well. I have often compared the Nikola Vucevic signing to Mo Wagner. Mo Wagner, again, tries his hardest on defense. I'm not gonna knock the guy for trying, but he struggled defensively. Not much of a perimeter guy, had to play him in drop, but he would often make up for whatever defensive shortcoming he had with some decent offense. Now, Wagner also was involved in some of the team's worst lineups and worst defensive lineups at that, played a lot with Noah Penda. The second most used lineup with Mo Wagner was Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Tristan da Silva, Noah Penda, Mo Wagner. Again, Bane and Suggs are your offensive anchors, but Wagner could give you a little bit on offense. They only scored 104 points per 100 possessions in 21 minutes. They only gave up 83. So a little bit of a trade-off there, perhaps, that they were able to defend. But most of the lineups with Mo Wagner were underwater, and some of them were very seriously underwater. Again, the most used lineup that he was in was 24 minutes over 6 games, so 4 minutes per game. Javon Carter, Desmond Bane, Jet Howard, Noah Penda, Mo Wagner. That went at minus 26.9 with a 138 defensive rating. Again, just a half of basketball, 24 minutes over 6 games. It's hard to draw much from that. Other than to say we watched Mo Wagner, and I think we would all agree that Mo was still a step behind. He was still kind of getting his legs under him after the injury, and I don't think that was the best representation of Mo. So let's forget about 2026. We're going to lose the Desmond Bane stuff, but what do you look like in 2025? A lot of it was the same deal. The Magic were able to hide him a little bit defensively. A Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs, Gary Harris, Jonathan Isaac, Mo Wagner lineup, most used lineup, 45 minutes over 10 games. So again, 4.5 minutes per game. A minus 2.3 net rating with an 83.5 defensive rating. The next most used lineup, 26 minutes over 4 games. So again, roughly 6 minutes per game. 26 minutes over 4 games. Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs, Jet Howard, Jonathan Isaac, Mo Wagner. A minus 16.8 net rating, but a 103.6 defensive rating. Same deal with the next lineup, 24 minutes over 13 games. Anthony Black, KCP, Franz Wagner, Jonathan Isaac, Mo Wagner, plus 16.2. And with a 102.1 defensive rating. Again, very small sample sizes. Next lineup was 70.7 in 20 minutes. That was AB, Gary Harris, Franz Wagner, Jonathan Isaac, Mo Wagner. You can see that if you put Mo Wagner in lineups with decent defenders, that team can hold its own defensively. The question is, you're putting that with Jonathan Isaac, who tends to be an offensive drain. It's just kind of what the stats say about him. I'm not saying he is an offensive drain. He's obviously not holding the ball very much, not making shots when he gets them, but just statistically, his on-off numbers say he's kind of an offensive drain. So there is at least this little bit of evidence that with the personnel the Magic have, and obviously Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Gary Harris are no longer with the team. They were 2 very good defenders, 2 frankly underrated defenders for the things that they did, that the Magic, I think, do miss. If you are able to surround Vucevic with good defenders, it can work. And I do think Vucevic is a more versatile and will be a more consistent offensive player than Mo Wagner. So I think there is some upside there. I do think it is really important to make sure Vuce is surrounded by good defenders. I do not want very many Vuce Paolo lineups. I think we will see it just because naturally we will see it. They'll test it out. They should absolutely be tested out. Do it in the preseason. Let's get a feel for it. See if it works. See if it gives him the spacing that he needs. But generally, I would say let's keep Vucevic with Franz, Suggs, and Black. Suggs or Black. Maybe Bane's thrown in there too. But Vuce with Suggs or Black at the lead guard position, if not both. Usually always with Franz. I think we'll see a lot of Franz and Vuce together. And then at the 4, either Tristan to Silva, or if you want to get spicy, I'm willing to go Noah Penda there. I'm honestly, I'm not selling my stock. I'm not selling all my stock on Jonathan Isaac. I thought he was playing really well and starting to kind of find his groove again before he got hurt last year. I think Vuce and Isaac know how to play together. I just think they do. But there is definitely a real risk that, you can't just throw Vuce into the starting lineup. I don't think that's going to work. I think that completely changes the complexion of the defense in a way that the Magic will not make up for offensively. I think Goga Bitadze is still the starter when Wendell Carter misses time. And I think the Magic need to emphasize the defensive impact and playing defense over offense, at least start the season. I think Vuce will be in the rotation. I think he'll be the backup center. But it's going to be the big question, and we're going to have to watch this early in the season. Can the Magic defend with Vuce on the floor? Can the Magic defend at the level they need to with Vuce on the floor? I do think because Vuce is likely coming off the bench, playing 20, 22 minutes per game, the impact the lack of defense or the defensive struggles will be papered over. He's not going to go up against starters for the most part. He's not going to be dealing with the best players on the other team. And I think that will help him. But the Magic have a lot of questions. Even though there's a lot known about this team, there's a lot of questions about whether the team can form enough cogent defensive lineups to either feed the offense or make up for whatever offensive shortcomings they have. Because that's what went wrong last year. That's what they didn't do last year. And that's the big question that I think Nikola Vucevic will have to answer. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of the places to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You check us out on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked On Magic. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. If you're on video, we're going to send you over to the first ever 24/7 YouTube channel on the NBA. On audio, check out Locked On NBA for your second listen. Doing some great stuff here to kill time during the summer over on Locked On NBA. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. I'm 50-50 on whether I'm doing an episode tomorrow. I am heading out of town over the weekend, so I may take Friday off. If I do, have a great weekend. We'll see you back here for an episode on Monday. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. We'll find out. We'll see how I'm feeling. But that's going to do it for me today. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.